room, in a courtroom, crowded every face in gloom. Truth on trial under high of light, shadows dancing in the dead of night. Fingers pointing secrets to bear, lies entwined in the heavy air. The jury's watching, hearts break in two. Whispers tremble, but the facts won't do. Judges, jury, kings of fate, deciding lives on a silver plate. The verdict's echoing so loud, innocence buried lost in the crowd. Faint confession behind a cracked door, a stained glove tossed upon the floor. Law books closed, though they never heal. Justice bends, but the scars stay real. Clock keeps ticking, truth on the line. Each tick weighs heavy, a paradigm. Chaos brews behind composure's mask. Answers buried in impossible tasks. Judges, jury, kings of fate, deciding lives on a silver plate. The verdict's echoing so loud, innocence buried lost in the crowd. Hey everybody, how y'all doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? Good to see you. Hey, something foreign. Hey, Crystal Muds. Hey, Bush Babies. How you doing? Replay gang. What's up? I know I was not live yesterday. I did not go live yesterday. Yesterday was a bit uneventful, I would say, in the trial, in the case of the United States versus Sean P. Diddy Combs. Um, Nothing really noteworthy, in my opinion. However, today I think that the prosecutors made a move that really rocked the airwaves. It really rocked the internet. It left so many people confused, conflicted. Um, a lot of the people who are like, oh, they overcharged him. They did this, they did that, they did this. See, they're dropping charges now, so because they know they're gonna lose. They know this case is a frivolous case, and they wasted the taxpayers' time and money, and da da da, free Diddy, and all of this and all of that. Okay, I'm gonna go over. I'm gonna give you guys an overview as to what exactly is going on. I'm gonna say this before I even get into it. As I always love to say over here on the docket, ignorance of the law can get you caught up. Ignorance of the law will never and will not ever excuse you from being prosecuted. Okay? If I go into the store and I steal something that I know I should have paid for, I cannot turn around to the store clerk that caught me and say, hey, look, I didn't know that this was stealing. I didn't know that this was classified as shoplifting. Can you give me a break on this? I'm sorry. I apologize. I'll pay for it, whatever. It's doesn't change the fact that I actually committed a crime, okay? Today, the court actually resumed at about 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it was basically a charge conference. After the United States submitted a letter overnight that some theories of liability are no longer being pursued by the government. Okay, some of their theories are no longer being pursued. Okay, so the charge conference is supposed to, well, it says here it's supposed to be, it was supposed to start at noon, but it was moved to 2 p.m. as I just stated, and then it actually started at 2:20. Sean Combs is in, sitting at the defense table. Next to him was his lawyer, Xavier Donaldson. Xavier Donaldson speaks to judge's courtroom deputy. There's talk of more potential delay at this time. So I don't know if the judge had something going on or if there was other pressing matters they were working on behind the scenes. I would imagine with a case this monumental that the judge actually cleared his complete schedule to handle this trial. So I believe it had something to do with Diddy's case. So at 3:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, they start. The judge says, sorry for the delay, but there was a full on constitutional challenge. Okay? Excuse me. There was a full on constitutional challenge. So Combs's Alexandra Shapiro, she speaks and she said, could we have another hour? The judge, I'm happy to give you that time. Shapiro, I'm sorry. Half an hour would be sufficient. So they break to 3:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then they're back. Judge Submarinian advised, be seated. Okay. So we've resolved the verdict form. So let's go through the charge. On page 1, any objections? AUSA, no. Combs's lawyer, no. The judge, page 2. I'm going to take out the references to the jury being the judge of the facts. We say that 3 times. Combs's Shapiro. We do not have any objections until page 13. AUSA, same here. AUSA, on page 13, on the conspiracy, a person need not know everyone else. AUSA, they don't have to have full knowledge of the RICO conspiracy, only that they agree to 2 predicate acts. The judge asking the defense. Response, Diddy's attorney Shapiro, we object. That's not the argument I was making in the Rule 29 as to Miss Christina Karam. She did not know of the hotel rooms. Judge, I overruled the government's objection. I added language from the Sans Tristis After the government, hold on, let me make sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, y'all. Let me speak this word in my headset. Oh, it is Sans treatise. After the government's letter of last evening. Now, Combs and Shapiro. We propose in line 21, you add the actions should be considered as well. In in this made in this made this argument to the judge Lemon last year in the Bruce Gorlick trial. Okay. The judge, I think this instruction is clear enough for the jury. That being said, the defense can make arguments about this in summation to make their point. I reject the defense suggestion on that point. Any more on page 13, AUSA. I have one on page 12, Shapiro. What Miss Smizer has referred to is the nature of the argument. The judge, I think that's right. I overrule the objection of the government. Let's move to page 14. Combs and Shapiro. On line 9, the government's markup of last night. Judge, page 15, AUSA Smizer. We have an objection to line 2 at the very top. It says the enterprise has to be the same throughout. We think it's confusing in this particular case where we speak of the inner circle versus the core, the chief of staff, and security. AUSA Smizer. For example, D Rock was security at the beginning, Fahim at the end. The same person doesn't have to stay in the position. The judge. What do you propose? AUSA. Some of the core of the enterprise has to be the same throughout. Judge. People are not core. Judge. This does not mean that every person has to be the same, but the core aspects have to be the same. Combs's attorney Driscoll. That might be inconsistent with Boyle, the Supreme Court case. AUSA Schmeiser. We could say the members of the organization can change. Judge. The danger is that the jury thinks that thinks that to have thinks that to make findings under each racketeering act. Combs and Shapiro. Can you give me a minute? Meanwhile, Inner City Press dug up a previous U.S. draft of the request of charge, 100 pages. The judge, page 20. I have one thing to raise. Combs and Shapiro. Mr. Driscoll has reminded me of another suggestion we have. This comes from Ocasio versus United States. You have to blame the Supreme Court. Driscoll. They have to prove the conspirators agreed to commit each element. The judge. Give me the full sentence. Combs is Driscoll. On page 19, line 4, after the words, actually occurred. You could add that each conspirator must be aware of each situational racketeering offense. AUSA Schmeiser, we are not required to show that there was an ongoing federal investigation. Wait a minute, is that correct? Wait. We are not required to, yeah, to show that there was an ongoing federal investigation. The judge. The statute has its elements. Using using thread to hinder complaint to law enforcement or a judge. Combs and Shapiro. There has to be a showing, there has to be a showing of the victim intended to approach federal law enforcement, had knowledge of the federal aspect of the offense. All right. So then, Schmeiser. The government is not going to proceed on 1512 C2, and we ask you not to instruct the jury on that. Judge, I assume there is no objection. Shapiro, certainly not. Schmeiser, on the forced labor, the government will be arguing that certain SMEX acts can be labor. We will be building off the R. Kelly case. The defense argues that the victims are well off. So we need to make this clear to the jury. Shapiro, we object. Combs is Shapiro. We are not arguing that sexual acts cannot be labor. Rather, that the victims here were not particularly vulnerable, like from the other countries without immigration status. AUSA. In R. Kelly, the Second Circuit said sexual labor falls within the statute. Judge, I overrule the government's objection. AUSA Schmeiser. In closing, we will be making this argument. Judge, absolutely. Sexual services can count as labor under the statute. Judge, just to move this along, because it is getting late, I will add reference to the forced labor statute. On the other, I am including a mens rea requirement in light of the vagueness, on the vagueness challenge. Combs and Shapiro. We think we think that is insufficient. The judge. The government is going to argue full throat throatly that there was knowledge and mens rea. Mens rea means like in his right mind, in his or her right mind. Combs and Shapiro. This offense was not in the initial indictment. We are not required to object to the US's request to change. Hold on, y'all. Give me a minute. Y'all, please tap in. If you're in here, if you're within the sound of my voice, I'm talking to y'all in the live chat. I'm also talking to y'all on the replay gang. Go ahead and tap in if you haven't done so already. It is, I need some water. It is definitely one of the ways that you can support the channel Go ahead and tap in, y'all. All right, so hold on. Where was I? Object to the United States request. Okay. Combs and Shapiro. If the government is now changing what they are going to argue with respect to the rugs, the jurors will notice it. It should be addressed. Judge, I agree. AUSA. In Waxier, the sentence about the buyer seller exception, it should be constructed narrowly. Combs and Shapiro. That's the context here. Judge, I'm going to reserve on this the buyer slash seller exception to conspiracy to distribute rugs. Judge, any objection on the special sentencing factor? AUSA, no. Combs and Shapiro, no. Judge, so counts 2 and 4 were almost to the finish line. Combs and Shapiro. The court has added that there is no requirement that a SMEX Act be performed. We object. Combs and Shapiro. The to wit clause of counts 2 and 4, the United States used that to trigger a 15-year minimum and to detain Mr. Combs alleged that these victims engaged in commercial SMEX acts, as did the enterprise letters. So this would be a constructive amendment. Combs and Shapiro. The March 10th enterprise letter said they would provide commercial SMEX acts. Judge, the government is going to be arguing that commercial SMEX acts occurred. What do you what do we do here? AUSA, this is blown out of proportion. We're not bound by the wit clauses. AUSA Schmeiser, there may be particular days the juror there may be particular days the juror finds that the acts were not completed, like when Jane Doe testified that a SMEX court was sent away. That's why we propose this instruction. We listed the dates in the enterprise letter. Combs and Shapiro, we're not conceding on the statute. The 15-year minimum only applies if it is triggered. A doesn't it doesn't force it doesn't require force, fraud, or coercion necessarily. This is a due process issue. Attempt is already captured here. Combs and Shapiro, this is very unfair. The judge, I am asking you for cases. We need to move on. Shapiro, I will email you cases. Judge, I don't need any further submissions. You'll have the final changes tonight. AUSA, there's no constructive amendment. AUSA Schmeiser, in the Intercontinental Hotel, there was force and then no completed SMEX acts. We charged it as SMEX trafficking. So they have been on notice. Combs and Shapiro. They maintain in the Intercontinental Hotel there was a FO going on, a SMEX Act, because he still has to finalize, to change and send it to them. Should be put in the docket. Oh, this is just his documentation. Judge, that's the note taker's documentation that I started to read y'all. My apologies. Judge, I'm going to take the paragraph out as argumentative. AUSA, I have some suggested edits. Jane Doe and Cassie both said they did their first FO to make their partner happy. That doesn't mean it can't later become SMEX trafficking. Combs and Shapiro. The best solution is to delete. Judge, I'll remove it. AUSA, initial consent does not preclude a finding of SMEX trafficking. Judge, I'll add that. Combs and Shapiro. Then add that um, initial, hold on, y'all. Then add that initial acquiescence may be considered as to the defendant's knowledge. Judge, we've got to keep moving here. Combs and Shapiro, we need balancing language. Judge, that's the balancing language. I'm going to use the modified language I proposed. Combs is Driscoll. May I be heard? Judge, 10-minute recess. I need to think. So they take a 10-minute recess so that Judge Arun Submarinian can think. What they're doing is they're going over the jury instructions with a fine-tooth comb. There are no surprises when it comes to the prosecution and the defense. At the beginning of any case, whether it be civil or criminal, the prosecution and the defense exchange what we call discovery, which is more commonly known as evidence. Okay, whatever the prosecution side has and whatever the defense plans to mount as their defense, they must also turn over to the prosecution. And in the end of the case, there's also these jury instructions. Both parties get to participate in crafting them. They get to be heard. They get to actually give their opinions on what exactly the jury is going to be instructed prior to deliberations. And that is what is happening right now. So they're back at 6:45 p.m. Judge, we're back on the record. I'm going to leave it. The parties are free to make their arguments in closing. Anything else? Combs and Shapiro. The change is supposed to capture that the defendant has to take a step to avoid learning that coercion is used. What the hell she mean? Judge, I'm removing a sentence. Combs and Shapiro. The next sentence too. Judge, no, that that that's a restatement. Combs and Shapiro. I just wanted to preserve my objection. Judge, unanimity instruction. Government, AUSA. As to the last one instance of SMEX trafficking, Judge, Counts 3 and 5. Anything from the US. AUSA, yes. We'd like to refer to an act of prostitution. The person traveling does not have to be a commercial sex worker. Combs is Shapiro. Those words aren't in the statute. Judge, I'm making the change. AUSA, a problem is the sentence does not scrutinize closely the use of immunity given here, different from transactional immunity. They are not trying to win their own freedom by helping to convict another. AUSA, and on on implic uh wait a minute on implicit bias, we process that to be shorter. At line 15, it draws attention to bias and may increase tensions among the jurors. Judge, I'll remove that. AUSA, two cases to put on the record. United States 554 F.30 230 2D Second Circuit 2008 and 316 F as in Frank APP 54. Combs is Shapiro. We'd prefer that the word government not be capitalized. Judge. So it's government. Fine and replace. Combs is Shapiro. To avoid the problem of headings, avoid the problem of headings misleading juries, let's cut them. Plus, I want to preserve this. We incorporate in all our filings. Judge, anything further? AUSA, no. Combs is Shapiro, no. Judge, we will get you the final charge tonight. See you tomorrow morning. Combs is Shapiro. For Mr. Agnifilio, he doesn't believe he will take more than 3 hours, but he'd prefer to start Friday morning if the rebuttal is an hour. AUSA, we object. It would waste the jurors' time to come in for a partial day. July 4th is looming. Combs is Shapiro. He could shorten it if it were on Friday, and then laughs. Judge, ending early Thursday would run more up against July 4th. Combs is Shapiro. Mr. Agnifilo is lead counsel and would prefer to do it this way. AUSA, we're not concerned. This is gamesmanship to give them more time to consider our summation. Shapiro, we think jurors are tired after lunch. The judge, the defense is making the application. I think it's fine for Mr. Agnifilio to start on Friday morning. AUSA, you could start later. AUSA, for Miss Slavik, 10 a.m., 2 hours. Lunch, Then 2 more hours. Judge, that's fine. Court is adjourned. All right, so I know that my thumbnail says charges dropped. Okay? That's because there were indeed charges dropped. I know a lot of people on the internet have been going crazy. TMZ informed everybody like, "Oh, charges were dropped. The case is weak. The government is losing." Da 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 da. The charges that were dropped are as follows: the attempted arson, specific allegations that Diddy tried to firebomb Kid Cudi's car, his Porsche. Also, the attempted smidnapping related to the alleged coercive abductions. Additionally, aiding and abetting sex trafficking. This broader charge was also removed. And this request was included by the government in a brief sent to the judge, the Honorable Judge Arun Submarinian, last night, late evening last night. These removals, and let me just clarify for everybody so that everybody understands, okay? These removals were done to simplify the jury instructions, leaving the focus on the remaining SMEX the remaining, I'm sorry, 6 racketeering predicates and the core SMEX trafficking and prostitution allegations. Still on the table, racketeering conspiracy based on 6 predicate acts. The first, bribery, which was proven with Eddie Garcia. Witness tampering, which was proven throughout the testimony. Um, Forced labor, which was also proven throughout testimony. Transportation transportation and inducement for prostitution, which was also proven by Jane Doe's testimony, Cassie Ventura's testimony, as well as the transportation piece. While the SMEX workers are not included in the particulars of the indictment, it also shows that they were flown in and out for the purposes of prostitution. And let's see. Oh, narcotics distribution and possession. That was proven by way of the evidence found after the raids, the testimony of Brendan Paul and others, SMEX trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. I'm not even going to repeat myself. That was already proven through testimony. Transportation to engage in prostitution. And in parentheses, it says the Mann Act. Okay? Now, is this normal? Is this something that the federal government does? Or are we to actually believe what everybody is saying on Beyonce's internet right now, that the government knows their case is weak? The government knows that they're going to lose. So at the last minute, they're changing it. They're trying to get it. They're trying to. This is normal process for the federal government. And here's why. The federal government frequently narrows or amends charges in criminal cases, especially complex ones like RICO or federal conspiracy trials. This is a common strategic legal move, often done to preserve the jury's focus. Okay? Removing weaker or confusing charges helps streamline the case and makes it easier for the jury to deliberate. Avoid reasonable doubt. Dropping less supported allegations prevents the defense from attacking the weakest parts of the case. Now, if you ask me, that's a shrewd move. That's a very, very, very shrewd move by the government. I've been saying this from the very beginning. The government is playing chess and not checkers. They're playing chess and not checkers because now, in the defense's closing arguments, they cannot reference the arson. They can't reference the aiding of and abetting of sex trafficking. They can't reference the alleged what was it? The aiding and abetting, the arson, and there was one more. I can't remember. But they can't reference those charges that have been dropped. So now their closing arguments have to focus on what the government feels is their strongest part of their case against Sean P. Diddy Combs. They feel strongly that they have proven the 6 predicate acts. So this is actually a strategic move to streamline the deliberations and also kind of steal some of the defense's thunder. Because had they not done that, let me tell you something. Mark Agnifilio would have been able to stand in that courtroom for about about maybe an hour and 30 minutes and just drive home the fact that there was no real evidence, no video evidence to show Diddy at Kid Cudi's house. There was no real evidence to show that he aided and abetted anyone in sex trafficking. There was no real, like, he could have spent so much time on those points to where he would have driven that home so much and then kind of gloss over the predicate acts that actually were proven to create enough reasonable doubt in the jury's heads before they go back to the deliberation room. Also, this is also done for trial time management. It eliminates the need for witnesses or evidence that could prolong the trial unnecessarily. In addition, jury instruction it clarifies jury instructions. It simplifies the legal instructions the judge must give to the jury. Now, real world examples of this. The Ghislaine Maxwell in 2021. Prosecutors dropped the perjury charges during her sex trafficking trial to focus exclusively on charges most likely to succeed with the available witnesses and timeline. The other one, another example, El Chapo in 2019. Prosecutors narrowed their evidence at trial by focusing in on only 3 of the original 17 criminal acts. I want you guys, if you're within the sound of my voice, to understand this, as I said before, I started giving you these examples, is normal practice. This is not something out of the norm. The government is not saying, oh my God, let's just throw our hat in and remove these charges because we're just not going to be able to convict them, or we might lose the whole case if we try to keep everything. No, this is to narrow the scope and focus the jury for deliberation specifically. So in El Chapo's case, they actually only continued forward with 3 predicate acts when originally there was 17. Okay? The next one is R. Kelly in 2022. After a conviction in Brooklyn, prosecutors in Chicago dropped several pending indictments, saying justice had been served and additional trials were unnecessary. Number 4, Elizabeth Holmes. Theranos. Charges related to patients were dropped pre-trial, and the government focused only on fraud against investors to avoid a more complicated trial. Now, specific to Diddy. In Diddy's criminal case, federal prosecutors withdrew allegations of attempted kidnapping, arson, and aiding and abetting sex trafficking from the RICO count. This tactic sharpens the narrative for the jury. It strengthens their odds at conviction on the most compelling claims, like forced labor and sex trafficking. It also shows that the Department of Justice is adopting based on how the trial is unfolding. The federal government's decision to narrow the charges in Diddy's RICO case, specifically by dropping the attempted kidnapping, arson, and aiding and abetting sex trafficking, has real implications for the trial. And it's a sign of how seriously the government is calculating the path to conviction. I'm going to read that again. I'm going to say it again for all of you guys in the back. For everybody that does not realize that this is a calculated, strategic legal move on the part of the United States government. In Diddy's RICO case, specifically by dropping the attempted kidnapping, arson, and aiding and abetting sex trafficking, has real implications for the trial. And it's a sign of how seriously the government is calculating the path to conviction. Here's what it means for Diddy, both legally and strategically. Now, it may strengthen the government's case. While it may sound like good news for Diddy that some allegations were dropped, it actually suggests prosecutors are tightening their case to focus on the strongest, most pivotal conduct. They're focusing on sex trafficking and forced labor as the predicate racketeering acts under the RICO charge. These are the charges supported by, these are the charges supported by the most credible witnesses, evidence, videos, text messages, financials, and corroboration. By doing this, the prosecution minimizes distraction that Diddy's team could exploit. to raise reasonable doubt. Bottom line is, this isn't the government backing off, it's them getting sharper, not softer. Now, on the defense side, the defense loses some opportunities to create doubt. When there are multiple charges or theories, defense lawyers can argue, if they're wrong about this, what else are they wrong about? By dropping weaker elements, the government removes that opening. This prevents the jury from thinking the prosecution is overreaching. It forces the jury to focus on just the strongest and most damning conduct. What effect may this have? The effect on Diddy. His legal team now has fewer weak points to attack, and a more focused case is harder to dismantle. RICO still stands, and it's still serious. The Federal RICO, Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act statute, is built so that the government only needs two predicate crimes to pursue a conviction. Even with some dropped, the government still alleges sex trafficking, forced labor, plus related acts like witness intimidation and or money laundering. So Diddy is still facing the full weight of RICO. And that means potentially a life sentence if convicted on the most serious counts. So even without the arson, the smidnapping, or the aiding and abetting of sex trafficking, the RICO charge remains as a massive legal issue for Diddy at this time. A sign that the prosecution thinks they're ahead. When prosecutors feel they're losing, they often try to keep everything in the overwhelming, in the overwhelm, everything in to overwhelm the defense. But when they feel confident, they drop unnecessary charges to avoid muddying the water. The fact that they are trimming the case down right before closing arguments signals that they believe we've got what we need to convict. This might indicate that the government is strategically preparing for deliberations and sees the current case as strong enough. What this means for the verdict. Now, for Diddy, it means fewer distractions. His lawyers have fewer angles to argue, to create and or argue, to create confusion and or argue overreach. A focused narrative. The jury will get a clean, powerful story of exploitation and control. Higher conviction odds. Streamlined cases often translate to stronger convictions. Sentencing still severe. Even with the trimmed charges, he still faces decades or life if he is convicted. Now, What's next for Diddy in jury instructions and the defense's likely closing strategy, especially now that the charges have been trimmed down? Okay, so jury instructions, what the judge will tell the jury in the jury instructions. The jury instructions are critical or a critical part of any trial. They frame how the jury is to legally, okay, how the jury is to legally interpret the evidence and what standards they must use to decide guilt. In Diddy's case, the jury will be instructed on things like the RICO requirements. To convict on RICO charges, juries must find that Diddy participated in an enterprise and that he committed at least two related criminal acts, predicate acts, such as sex trafficking, forced labor, forced labor, possible witness intimidation, or money laundering by bribery. The dropped predicates like attempted kidnapping, arson, or arson and aiding and abetting sex trafficking will not even appear in the instructions for the jury. So the jury must only evaluate what's left. The standard of proof. The judge will tell them you must find the defendant guilty beyond reasonable doubt. This is the highest legal standard. But in complex cases, clear jury instructions are key because multiple counts and legal terms can confuse jurors. Conspiracy. If any conspiracy charges remain like conspiracy to commit sex trafficking, the jury will learn that an agreement to commit the crime is enough, even if the crime didn't fully happen. And that's what the defense and the government were arguing in court today. The defense doesn't want that instruction within the jury instructions, but it has to be there because that's a part of the statute. And that overt acts, for instance, arranging travel, paying victims, can prove conspiracy. Okay? Now, what could potentially be Diddy's team's closing arguments? Now that the defense has chosen not to call any witnesses, their closing arguments become their last and strongest move. What we may want to expect them to do is emphasize reasonable doubt. They'll say the prosecution has a messy, sensational case full of uncorroborated witness testimony. They'll focus on inconsistencies in the victim's statements. They may even argue if they dropped three of their own charges, how strong is their case really? They'll even try to target witness credibility. Many of the accusers may have financial motives, social media exposure, post legal trouble. The defense will say these are not reliable people and their claims are exaggerated. They'll blame others in the enterprise. They might argue that Diddy was surrounded by independent adults making their own choices, or that Diddy didn't know about it, or did not direct any criminal activity, which that argument would fall flat on its face because they have text messages, they have voice notes, they have video. They know that he directed some of this. They even have video with him actually directing these SMEX acts. Or if something illegal happened, he was not directly involved. That they can't really do that. They really can't argue that. This is called rogue employees defense. And it's commonly used, believe it or not, in organized crime or SMEX trafficking cases. They'll try to undermine RICO itself. They'll argue there was no criminal enterprise, just a celebrity entourage. They'll try to argue what the government calls organized crime was really just chaotic celebrity behavior. And there's no pattern of crime, just isolated, incidents for over 20 plus years. So the stakes here are high. If the jury is convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Diddy was running a criminal enterprise involving sex trafficking and forced labor, he faces 20 years to life in federal prison on the RICO count alone, as well as additional years if convicted on any standalone charges. If they're not convinced, he could be acquitted, or he could be convicted on lesser counts, like outside of the RICO. Or they could really end in a mistrial on this one. Now, let's talk about if he's convicted real quick, because we're on the eve of all of this going down. Hey John, how are you, dear? Good to see you. We're on the eve of this thing. So, hey Bush babies, I see you. Y'all be sure to tap in. And if he is convicted on some or all of the charges, um some of the scenarios can go like this. Let's say, let's see, the penalty for RICO is up to 20 years per count or life imprisonment if one of the predicate acts is punishable by life. For instance, sex trafficking, that is punishable by a life sentence. Let's say he's convicted on RICO based on the sex trafficking or forced labor. Diddy could face 25 years to life. What's important to note is that the judge can stack or run the sentences concurrently, depending on the severity and guidelines. Now, for sex trafficking, which is 18 United States Code 1591, there's a mandatory minimum of 15 years and a maximum of life. No parole in the federal system. If Diddy is convicted of even one count, he could face a minimum of 15 years with no early release options, except a rare compassionate release. Now, the forced labor, which is 18 United States Code 1589, the penalty is up to 20 years or life if it involved serious harm or unaliving threats. The government has presented evidence of coercion, surveillance, and alleged abuse. Now, the conspiracy charges. Penalties usually tied to the underlying crimes. For example, conspiracy to commit sex trafficking is the same as sex trafficking, often used to secure convictions even if the underlying act is harder to prove directly. Combined sentencing possibilities. Let's see, outcome. Let's say he is convicted on RICO plus the underlying predicate of sex trafficking. The sentence could be 25 to life. Let's say it's RICO only. He could face 20 to 25 years. Now, the forced labor only is up to 20 years. Conspiracy only, 10 to 15 years, possibly concurrent. Let's say there's multiple counts that he's found guilty on. The sentences, of course, can be stacked, as I stated before, running them concurrently, totaling 30 years, but it could potentially lead to a life sentence. The sentencing process, if convicted, sentencing won't happen immediately. It usually takes 3 to 4 months. A pre sentencing report, which is called a PSR, will be prepared by the United States Probation Office. Both sides will submit sentencing memorandums arguing for longer or shorter terms. Of course, the government's going to argue for the longer, the defense will argue for the shorter. The judge, in this case, Judge Arun Subramanian, will then issue the sentence. He'll weigh victim impact statements, prior criminal history, public risk, level of remorse, or cooperation. Now, how long do y'all think the jury deliberations will take? I'm talking to y'all right now in the live chat, and I'm also talking to the folks on the replay gang. How long do you guys think that the jury deliberations will take in this case? I'm saying, I'm going to say, throw it out there. I'm thinking maybe a week. I'm thinking it may take about a week. What do you guys think? I wonder if something foreign says, I wonder if his defense wishes they called a witness or two now. You know what? It's just, I mean, it's something that to me, it's not unheard of. Something foreign says 5 days. It's not unheard of for the defense to not actually present any witnesses on behalf of their client, because during, you know, these criminal cases, the burden of proof lies with the prosecution team. Okay, the defense doesn't have to speak. They don't have to put up a defense. They don't have to call any witnesses. It's just like, for me, it's weird because I was just like, he doesn't have any other past or current employees that could come to the Southern District of New York courthouse and, like, say, well, I didn't notice any of that, or I didn't know any of that was going on, or we don't, this is not, this is what we do at Combs as Enterprises. We do music, we assign artists, we create amazing things, and it's a wonderful work environment. And no, nobody could come to speak to the organizational structure and what his defense is claiming really went on there. It's just that it's not a criminal enterprise. That is just, to me, that to me, I think, could hurt them. I think that could hurt Diddy. He doesn't even have a character witness. And I mean, just someone even to come there and speak to his character. Hold on, y'all. And I'm live. Just even someone to come to speak to his character. Just a childhood friend, anybody. It's just, I don't know. Any of these celebrities, any of his celebrity friends, where are they? It's like Kanye. Yay went to the court. Why isn't Yay on the witness list? You know? And even to that point, his defense is saying that this is a lifestyle. He's a swinger. I'm aware that that is an actual lifestyle. There's some truth to that. Why doesn't he have anybody else coming out and saying, "Hey, this is perfectly normal. I met Diddy, me and my wife, we're swingers. I'm also a, cockhole. I would be, we would switch and trade." Like it's just I don't know. I don't know. To me, it just seems like with the where the stakes are set, I don't think this is the time to grandstand, and I feel like that's what the defense is doing, and I don't know if that's going to help or hurt their case at this point. And I don't know. But I think you're right, something foreign. When I said a week, I'm talking Monday through Friday. So you said 5 days. I'm with you on that. I think it's going to take 5 days for jury deliberations. Federal juries take their job very seriously, especially in high profile RICO cases. Um, Here's a rough idea. So, this case type in a RICO case with multiple charges, it usually takes 3 to 7 days. In a case where one major count, let's say SMEX trafficking with one major count, 2 to 4 days. In a case where it's um, complicated or difficult testimony happening, that could end, that could go 7 days or maybe end in a mistrial. So there's factors that affect the timing, like the number of counts, the volume of testimony and evidence, the jury dynamic, you know, conflict, fatigue or confusion, how clear the jury instructions are. So what we should be watching for next is, apparently closing arguments are supposed to happen on Thursday of this week, tomorrow. So I will definitely be tuning in and paying close attention to what's happening. Jury instructions should be on Friday of this week, as far as read out to the jury. And as I advise you guys, for those of you who are just coming in, hey, Lisa says what? The final draft of jury instructions, well, not even draft, the final will be sent to both parties tonight, because they went through all of that early today. That's basically what court was all about today, just simply jury instructions. Monday, June 30th, the jury should begin their deliberations. So it's kind of crazy to me that we're here. We are here. This is actually one of the biggest cases in a long time, a big case in a very long time. So it's going to be interesting to see how this turns out, how this pans out. There has been a lot of people on either side of this thing. A lot of people are saying, oh, they're just trying to take down another strong black man. Oh, they're just trying to muddy his name and ruin his life. No, Diddy ruined his own life. He ruined his own life. He couldn't keep his hands off of women as far as physically abusing them. He used funds from his organization, his legitimate organization. Like, if you're gonna do something like this, be cash and carry, bro. Do cash and carry. You know what I'm saying? And if you're gonna do cash and carry, don't take it out of a business account. Have a personal account. Have a person, because it would be kind of different if they could not link this whole situation to his organization. But because the American Express cards were paying for these SMEX workers' travel, hotel rooms, different things were being paid for by Bad Boy Entertainment. That is when you create a criminal enterprise. And a lot of people are like, why did they charge him with RICO? He never got any money. Listen, he got smecks. He got his sexual desires met. Okay? The common goal does not always have to be money. A lot of people mistake that, oh, RICO means money. It does not have to be money. Okay? Somebody could start a criminal enterprise to get all the honey buns that they want and need for the lifetime supply illegally. You know what I'm saying? Honey buns with cocaine spread on top. That's a criminal enterprise. Okay? As long as you're using your company for the purposes of such. So it's like, it's a lot of people that don't understand. Um Now, I also researched if these particular charges could be refiled. If they could, the ones that they dropped off, if they could be refiled later. The conspiracy to commit arson, the aiding and abetting of sex trafficking, and the I can't remember why I can't remember the third one they dropped off. They dropped three of the counts off. I'll go back. I'll go back and see. But it says here probably not. Here's why. In federal court, prosecutors usually pursue all known viable charges at once. If a jury acquits on the current charges or the case ends in a mistrial, double jeopardy, or strategic considerations may prevent refiling of dropped charges. So, in summary, if it's dropped from instructions, then basically it's not going to be that charge or theory is out of the case. The jury won't be able to consider them. It's not listed in the jury instructions, so therefore it's legally irrelevant at this point. Can they revisit or revive these charges? Very unlikely, unless there's a mistrial or new evidence uncovered later. Now, can the state, let's say, the federal government said, you know what, let's kick this arson out. Let's kick out the aiding and the abetting and the other one that they dropped. It's only three charges that they dropped out of the jury instructions, which essentially makes them irrelevant to the case going forward, right? They've amended their charging, okay? Just to narrow the case. And I researched, I said, can the state then pick those charges up? Wherever those crimes occurred, can state, can that particular state, because it occurred in their jurisdiction, can they actually bring him up on those charges? The answer is absolutely yes. The state could theoretically bring charges related to the same underlying conduct, but only if the acts violate state law and the state has jurisdiction and The federal prosecution does not trigger double jeopardy under state law. Now, let me break that down for you as far as state versus federal charges, how it works. Separate sovereign rule. Under the United States law, federal and state government are considered separate sovereigns. Okay? That means you can be prosecuted by both for the same conduct as long as one case is federal and the other case is state. For example, a person could be federally charged with sex trafficking and also face state charges for rape, kidnapping, or assault based on the same acts. Now, could the state charge Diddy specifically? Absolutely yes. If the alleged crimes also break state laws, New York's laws on sex trafficking, coercion, assault, etc., state prosecutors could bring their own charges, but it depends on the following: jurisdiction. The conduct must have happened in that specific state. For example, New York, California, and Florida. State interests. The state attorney general or district attorney must believe it's worth pursuing independently. Double jeopardy rules. Some states, for example, New York, have stranger. Hold on, let me make sure I say this right. I'm sorry. Some states, like, for example, New York, have stronger protectionism and may limit back to back state/federal prosecutions. But there are limits. Double jeopardy sometimes. While federal double jeopardy doesn't bar state prosecution, some states limit it. New York has a strong statutory double jeopardy law under CPL S 40.20, which says the state generally can't re-prosecute someone who was allegedly tried federally for the same conduct unless the federal case was dismissed or ended in a mistrial, or the federal government didn't adequately protect New York's interest. So if New York, so if in New York, it would be somewhat difficult, but not impossible, for state prosecutors to come after Diddy for the same exact conduct alleged federally. I thought that was interesting because I was like, well, let's say he's acquitted or this ends in a mistrial. Can the state of New York actually go after him? It's a yes, they can. But there are different factors that are weighed and different things that are taken into consideration. Now, I hope you guys understood all of everything that I just shared with you, because boy, it was a lot. As of today, and I've been giving out points for those of you who are new here. I give out a point every single day of the trial. Currently, the leaderboard is the government has 17 points, Jane has 5 points, and the defense has 4. So I've had the defense trailing behind the government for some time. Now, the government is in a higher point bracket because they're the only ones that presented a case in chief. I've been waiting for the defense's turn so I can actually rate and see what their performance looks like. They gained their 4 points by way of their cross examination. You know, Brian still gained them a point. Um, Westmoreland, Nicole Westmoreland, she gained them a point. Tinny Gare she gained them a point also. Xavier Donaldson, he gained them a point as well with his cross examination of the government's witnesses. So, like, I was waiting, and also I was being fair as well. While, you know, if their cross deserved the point for the day, they were going to get it. But it seems to me that Diddy's team has taken kind of like a window seat or like a back seat to everything that's going on. And I think that's a huge mistake because the government, up to last call, the government is being very methodical. They're calculating every single step, every move that they make. The recent decision to drop the attempted arson, the attempted smidnapping, as well as the aiding and abetting for SMEX trafficking charges. Those are the charges that they dropped off of the RICO today. Well, late yesterday. They wrote it in their briefs to the judge yesterday, but that only helps to sharpen their case. That only helps to clear the path to a conviction because less confusion, it takes away the defense's ability to argue on these points. It takes away them from belaboring those points to create reasonable doubt. And now the defense has to figure out how they're going to actually do an impactful closing statement focusing on the strongest parts of the government's case. They have them on SMEX trafficking. They have them on bribery. They have them on transportation for the purposes for prostitution. They do. Let's just keep it a whole stack. They have them on those. And they only need two predicate acts within the last 10 years to prove the RICO. So I don't know. I don't know. Um, like I said, tomorrow closing arguments are to begin. I really, really, really wanted to be there. I wanted to be there so bad, but it's okay. I can certainly continue to cover this case, give you guys my opinion, as well as like an overview of the law based on research, actual research that I'm doing. I'm not just sitting on Beyonce's internet, giving you my opinion and telling you how I don't think this is right or this is wrong. No, I'm looking up the laws. I'm looking up why the government dropped these charges. I'm not just like out here giving you like a whole, sensationalized, like, this is what I think. No, I do mix in my opinion, but I also provide you with actual facts. Anything that I say on my live streams, you can actually research it yourself. There should be no reason in 2025 that any of us should be ignorant in regards to any part of the judicial system or the law in general. It's at your fingertips. We all have a cell phone. Google works for everybody. The information is out there on the information highway. You can find all of this information online. Do your research. Okay? But guys, I'm going to get ready to get up out of here. I appreciate each and every one of you within the sound of my voice. That goes out to everybody in the live chat right now, as well as those of you who are catching this on the replay. Replay gang, and also those in the live chat right now. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing today. Be sure to set your notifications to all so that you are notified when I go live or add new content. I have some really exciting news. I'm going to buckle down this weekend and I am going to do my Brian C. Koberger update. There has been a lot going on in that case. So I'm probably going to spend like half of the day with you guys on Saturday doing the update, and like a bit of Sunday, a good deal of Sunday with you as well. So stay tuned for that. That is the next case that I will be following. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, Brian Christopher Goldberger has been indicted and has been incarcerated since he was apprehended. I want to say back in September of 2023. Yeah, 2023. He's been incarcerated um, on alleged unaliving charges for the quadruple unaliving of four University of Idaho students in their off-campus home back in November of 2022. That case is heating up. The unaliving penalty is on the table in this one. And there's so many twists and turns in it. It's unreal. So definitely subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. I'm still working diligently to grow this channel. Guys, definitely subscribe. If you're a true crime fan or like a couch detective and you like to know about the legal system, the law, promise you, subscribe. You'll love it here. Let me rewind my song. Let me rewind the channel song. Here we go. Evil strikes, it's the sound of doom in a courtroom, crowded every face in gloom. Truth on trial under high light, shadows dancing in the dead of night. Fingers pointing secrets to bear, lies entwined in the heavy air. The jury's watching, hearts break in two. Whispers tremble, but the facts won't do. Judge and jury, kings of fate, decide lives on a silver plate. The verdicts echo, rings so loud, innocence buried lost in the crowd. Faint confession behind a cracked door, a stained glove tossed upon the floor. Law books close, though they never heal. Justice bends, but the scars stay real. Clock keeps ticking, truth on the line. Each tick weighs heavy, a paradigm. Chaos brews behind composure.
Porsche's mask, answers buried in impossible tasks. Transgression, kings of fight, decide on a silver plate. The verdicts that go results aloud. Innocence buried lost in the crowd.